Hey guys, I'm Manoj and I'm back with another brand new series for you guys. So this time we are going to do a AI and ML video series. And this is one of my most interested areas and I hope you guys will enjoy this series as much as I do. Now AWS has a lot of amazing AI and ML related services guys. So if you go to your console and go to services and you should find a separate section for machine learning. See? So you have a bunch of services here. And if you can remember, we already have a series on Amazon Lex where we have created a chatbot from scratch who can like grab weather information from a third party API and have a conversational chat interface with the user. So in that particular video series, I mentioned even though we are now interacting with text, we can interact with voice as well. So today, that is what exactly we are going to do. So we are going to use another service called Amazon Polly that enables us to interact with voice with your backend. Isn't that amazing? And there are a bunch of other services as well. So I'm planning to go through most of these services in this series. So our today's focus is Amazon Polly. And as usual, we are going to create an application so you guys can also follow along. And this time we are going to create a talking application. Now let me give you a quick demo. Here's my already built talking app. You can type anything here and select any voice and then ask it to speak. So let me just give you a quick demo here.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you are enjoying this Amazon Polly video as much as I do. Keep watching. Thanks.
Let me try out with a different voice. I'll choose Justin.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you are enjoying this Amazon Polly video as much as I do. Keep watching. Thanks.
Awesome.
So basically you can have a lot of different voices like female, male, children, like, and you can have different accents as well. I will show you all those references later in this video, right? So what really is AWS Polly or Amazon Polly rather? So Amazon Polly is a text-to-speech service, guys. And Amazon Polly, it turns text into lifelike speech. So lifelike is the key thing, right? So you don't feel like there's a robot is talking back to you, but it's like more natural voice. And for that, it uses deep learning technologies to synthesize those speech, right? And we are going to use this service especially through the AWS SDK. Now this is the JavaScript SDK. I will post all these links down here. And if you go to Polly service, you should see it has a different API methods. Look at this one. This is called synthesize speech. So synthesize speech is basically the API method that will take the user text input and convert that into audio stream. So this is what we are going to do in this application. We are going to extract the text what the user is typing in and we'll get that text as well as the selected voice ID and we will call that synthesize speech API to get with this input, and once we got the audio stream we will store it in a S3 bucket and then we will grab a signed URL for that particular audio stream. So signed URLs are basically expires after a short while and we will send that back to our application so it can output that voice. So this is what we are going to do, and as usual I have a blog post written on that and I'm going to follow along this blog post and copy paste any code necessary so you guys can do the same thing. So let's get started. I will take a terminal and go to desktop and create a folder speaking app and cd into speaking app, open it in Visual Studio Code. Okay, now these are the services that we are going to use. We are going to use Amazon Polly, Amazon S3, AWS IAM for setting up all the permission, and AWS Lambda that talks to the Amazon Polly's API and also S3 APIs. So we need front end and back end. So our back end, we are going to use serverless framework for that because I got a couple of requests to use serverless framework in one of the videos. So this will be an example of that. So let's take an integrated terminal and first install serverless framework globally. Hit that in and hit enter. That will install serverless framework. I've already done that. So now we are going to create a service or a project using serverless framework. So you can simply do that by typing serverless create dash dash template, and we are going to create an AWS Node.js project and I call that service backend. So as soon as you paste in this code and hit enter, you should see there's a folder called Backend with handler.js and serverless.yml file. Right. Now serverless.yml file is our main configuration file, and as you can see, it has well commented. You guys can read along. And we are going to use AWS as the provider and the runtime as Node.js 8.10. So let's copy this code from our blog and replace this whole thing. Service name, you can name it anything. So in my case, I will type YouTube backend. So provider runtime is same, and the region that I'm going to provision all my resources is US East 1, which is North Virginia region. And role, just forget about this for a moment. We'll get back to that. And this is our Lambda function. So this is the Lambda function. We call it speak. And this Lambda function, we are going to send the user input to the poly service. And once I got the audio stream, we will again call the S3 API and convert that audio stream into an MP3 file and save it on S3, and again get back that signed URL for that MP3 file and send it back to the user. So that's what we are going to do in this Lambda function. And I have set up an API gateway as well. So as soon as we add a HTTP event, it will create an API gateway, and with the path /speak, which will trigger this Lambda function. And this method is a post method, and we are enabling cross-origin resource sharing. So we can call this endpoint without an issue from any frontend. We have handler.js file. So this is where the Lambda code is. And if you go back to the serverless YML, it's referring handler.speak function. And currently I have a function called hello. So let's replace that function. Oh, before that, we have to do one other thing. We have to create other resources. So since we are using an S3 bucket, let's create that S3 bucket using AWS Console. Of course, you can use serverless framework as well, but I want to keep things quite simple. So let's use AWS Console to create our S3 bucket that will hold our MP3 files. So I will go to S3 and click create bucket. We'll name it YouTube Poly MP3 and hit next, 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 create bucket. If I search for that, YouTube Poly MP3. So this is our bucket, right? So we have the bucket. In the blog, I named it as My Talking App, but in this case, a different name. Doesn't matter, but make sure the name is unique. Now we have to create an IAM role, guys. So why do we need an IAM role? Now, the serverless framework will create the Lambda function that will talk to the poly service as well as S3 service. So the Lambda should have the permission to talk to both of these services. In order to do that, we have to attach a role with the corresponding permission so that it can talk with those two services without an issue. So you can use the visual editor in IAM, and I have used the visual editor and created this one, but I'm not going to go through that. In early videos, I have used visual editor, but in this case, I'm just copying the policy from the blog and will create an IAM role and attach this policy. I will type IAM, go to roles, create a new role, and which service do I want to attach it? Lambda. And next, permissions. So I will click create policy button here. That will take me to the Visual Editor. I will go to JSON tab and replace this existing policy with this policy that I just copied from the blog post. So let's go through this policy. So as you can see, there are two main statements for this policy. Let's expand the first statement. So this statement, it allows this Lambda function to call all the poly services so that our Lambda function can talk to the poly service without an issue. And the second statement is another allow policy, so which allow all S3 actions for the bucket that I am specifying. In this case, I have to change the bucket name to YouTube Poly MP3, which is my bucket name. You guys can use your bucket names and get back here and change this to that. And the next line, that will allow you to access the inner folders as you see /wildcard. All right. So that's our policy, and review the policy and give it a name, YouTube Poly role, create the policy. It says created, click on this link, and once you click that, you need to copy the ARN of that particular policy. You can do that by clicking here. And you go back to your serverless YML file, and if you can remember, we have removed that role attribute. Now add that role attribute and paste that in this ARN. So it's mentioned in the blog, so you guys can do that exactly. Now next thing is building our speak lambda function. So speak lambda function, as I previously mentioned, does three main tasks. First one, it calls the synthesize speech API by passing in the user input together with the voice ID that is coming from the front end, and the poly service will return the audio stream. So you get that returned audio stream and put it in the S3 bucket in an MP3 format. Afterwards, it will get a signed URL for that particular MP3 file saved in the S3 and send it back to the front-end application so it can play. So these are three tasks. So what do you have to do first? We need to install a couple of npm libraries. Basically, we have to have AWS SDK library so it can talk to all those AWS services. And let's have UUID library to generate an unique string for our MP3 files. Clear the screen and paste it in npm install AWS SDK, and second one npm install UUID. Alright, so now I'm going to copy the entire Lambda function code. It's a bit of a lengthy code. Of course you can like separate them into different functions, but I didn't do that because this is not a clean coding video. If I add like multiple functions, it would be like difficult for the readers to go through the blog post. So that's why I put it in the same function. So I copy the code and go to my handler.js file and replace the existing code with the code I copied. So let's go through this code a little bit. So basically, this is the function that get called as soon as a user visit /peak endpoint. So it will pass the event. So this event will contain an attribute called body. So in that body, we will have the text attribute or the user pass text attribute and the voice ID, right? So we are passing them from the front end. So we can access that by typing event.body.text. So we got those two in and we are creating this poly param object. So once we have that, we have to define the output format as MP3. Then we are going to call in poly.synthesize speech API. Now this poly is coming from AWS Poly SDK. S3 is coming from AWS S3 SDK. Right? So poly.synthesize speech and passing in that param object, this one, and on success, it will return the audio stream for that corresponding text. Now that we have the audio stream, we are going to save that in the S3 bucket. So I have created a name for the MP3 file as a UUID string, and S3 bucket, instead of my talking app, we have to replace it with our bucket name, which is YouTube Poly MP3. We are creating another param object with the bucket name and the key. Key name is basically the ID, the UUID. So each voice file will have a unique name. And the body, we are passing the audio stream. All right. So then we are going to use S3 put object API, and on complete, that means once it is properly saved on the S3 in the MP3 format, we are doing the third task, which is getting an assigned URL for that saved object. So let's create another param object by specifying the S3 bucket name and the key name or the object name of that MP3 file, asking sign URL for that particular object. So we are using s3.getSignURL and passing in that parameter. So it will create a sign URL for that particular saved MP3 file and return as a URL. Then we are creating a result object so we can send it back to the user. We are going to execute the callback function with the result object that we just created here. So it will pass the bucket name and the key and the URL. Make sure guys to add these headers, access control, allow origin to star, or maybe if you have a domain, add that domain name here, but in this case add star, right? Status code 200, so that will return the result to the front end. So we are using the API gateway as the Lambda proxy mode, so that's why we have to like configure the payload in this manner. So I'm not going to go in details with that. Now we have to deploy this API on AWS, so it will provision all this Lambda function as well as the API gateway, right? So to do that, let's use SLS deploy or serverless deploy. So I will take the prompt, clear the screen, SLS deploy. Now before using deploy, you have to use SLS or serverless configure and then add your access key ID and secret key access key and create a profile for yourself. So if you do not specify the a serverless profile, it will use the default one. In my case, I have a profile called YouTube. So that profile, I'll use it. If you guys don't use this profile tag, it will use the default profile that you have already configured with SLS configure or serverless configure. Make sure to go into the backend folder and then type SLS deploy. Oh, we got an error, guys. So it's basically something wrong with the role, and we have made a mistake here. So basically, I have copied the policy ARN, not the role ARN. And I think we didn't create the role as well. We just created the policy. So we'll do that adjustment really quick. Sorry about the confusion. So well, I named the policy called YouTube poly role, so that's where the confusion occurred. So it has to be like YouTube poly policy. So that's fine. So let's go to roles and click create role. Use Lambda service again. Next permission and click filter policies option here and select customer managed and then type YouTube poly role. It's confusing, guys, so it should be like policy. I named it as a role, right? So this is the policy that we just created or copied from the blog post. Sorry about the confusion again, right? Just click next tags and click review. Now let's give it a name, YouTube poly actual role. Okay, click create role. Okay, and if you search it again, YouTube poly actual role, and now copy this one. Go into your role and paste it in, save it, and clear the screen and do SLS deploy again or serverless deploy again. This time it should be successful. Nice. So we got the post endpoint. Now the post endpoint, it has this slash dev slash speak, not just slash speak. Now dev is basically the stage. By default, serverless has created a API gateway stage called dev, and so that's why we have the dev here. So we are going to refer this from the front end. So before that, we have to have a front end. So let's create a front end. And I am on the root level, and I will create a new Angular application. So you guys can use React, Vue.js, or whichever the front end framework you like. In my case, Angular. Ng new client. Would you like Angular routing? No, I don't need. This is a very simple application. I don't need any routing. So let's create the Angular application. You will see the folder is created called client, and let's go to the blog, and you see we are at here. We are creating the Angular application. See, we ran this, and it says once the application is created, you have to create an Angular service. Why do we need the service? From that Angular service, we'll call our API, right? So that's why we need a service. So let's copy that as well if that is completed. Okay, now creation is completed. I will go to client folder and I'm going to create that service nggs API. So we'll call that service API. And if you expand the client folder and go into the source and go into the app, you should see appservice.ts. So in the blog, we can copy in this code. So this is nothing but a simple HTTP post call from our service to the backend. I will just replace that code here, and you will see a placeholder to paste the endpoint here, and I'll go to my earlier bash shell and copy this post endpoint and replace it here. So in our service, we have a method that sends a post request to our endpoint, which is /dev/speak, that will call our Lambda function. Now the speak function will get some data from our app component. So now let's create the app component. Let's go to app component.html and clear all the default code, and from the blog you can copy the app component code here, paste it in. So app component basically has two things. The first one, you have already seen it in the demo, a text area to type in the user input, and then a drop down list to select the voice, and the submit button or the speak now button. Alright guys, so let's look at the corresponding TS file or component file. So we will replace the code in the blog for the component as well, and after that we'll have a look at it. So I will just totally replace this code and let's have a look at it. So this is our app component class, and I have a variable called voices rather, and there I've listed these names, Matthew, Joanna, and these four names. Now these are corresponding to the voice IDs that is supported by Amazon Poly. So that's why I have listed it in an array. So we can use a drop-down menu to allow the users to pick whatever the voice that they want to narrate their text, right? And this is the speak now handler function that will get called when the user hit speak now button. So it will pass the input, which is the input of the user entered text, and the selected voice from the drop-down menu. Then we are going to call upon our API, which is our API service. We will require it in the API as a dependency. So API service, can you see we have imported up here, and there's a private variable called API. So we call it this.api.speak, and we are passing in the data object, which is the text and the voice. So the API service will receive the data as that, and then it will call the post endpoint, which is our /dev/speak. So the return value, we will capture it as a result variable. So in that result variable, we will pass into this function called play audio. So this play audio, it will take the URL of the image. As you can remember, we have requested a signed URL, which is a temporary URL, and we are passing that URL for the play audio, and there we are going to create a new audio object and set the source as that particular URL, and then we play the audio. So that's why we hear that volume, right? So let's see if everything works. I will take the integrated terminal, clear out the content, and make sure you are in the client folder, and I will type ngserve to spin up the front-end application. Give it a second. Oops, it says it's already in use. Maybe my previous example, it's running on 4200 ngserve dash port 4300. Alright, so it is built. So let me go to a browser and call localhost 4300 and hit enter, and I get nothing. Well, we couldn't do one other thing. Actually, we could have like followed this block. There's one other part left. So that is nothing but we have to add few more dependencies to our app.module.ts. Basically, we have to add this form module. Since we are using ng module in our app component HTML, we have to have the form module in place, and also HTTP client module since we are making the HTTP request. So let me copy this one as well. I will go to app.module.ts, and this particular file, replace the whole thing and save. Let's go back here and see if everything works. There you go. It seems to be working and I don't have any errors. I will go to the network section as well, and let's try this. Hello world, and let's use Joanna and speak now. And I got a 200. And I'm hearing that voice as well through my headset. You guys can't hear it though. So, but let's inspect the return value from the Lambda backend. You can see the bucket name YouTube poly mp3 and the key ID. You see this is the uuid.mp3 and this is the URL. Let me copy this full URL, and I will go to another browser tab and paste it, and now hit enter. As you can see, maybe you might have not seen it. Let me just pull it up. It has downloaded my mp3, right? And I can play it as an mp3 file as well. Now I can hear it again, but you guys can't. Okay, let me just remove my headset and play it loudspeaker.
Okay, guys, let's hear the Joanna speaking hello world.
Hello world.
Nice. So let's add few other text. I'll select Ivy in this case.
Hi guys, we have come to the end of this tutorial.
Alright guys, so we are at the end of this tutorial. And before winding up, I want you to have a look at the Amazon Poly pricing. Well, Amazon Poly is basically charging you for the characters that it converts to speech, right? Look at this pricing example. So basically for 1 million characters, so that will play around 23 hours and 8 minutes, it will cost you about $4, right? So that's it for this tutorial. I'll see you in another AI or ML video. Thanks guys.